A very good afternoon to our viewers. We continue to come to you on almost a daily basis to keep you updated with what is happening in our country since March 2nd. The status quo basically remained the same, where there has been no movement with the recount, either at the level of the Region 4 or across the country. I have with me in studio here this evening two candidates of the People's Progressive Party, as well as two former ministers, Minister of Education and Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, Dr. Fank Anthony, Priya Manickchand. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eddy, for having us.
We are seeing more and more persons are coming out, persons in the coalition, persons in civil society, the international community, international organizations denouncing what has happened with regards to the results of the March 2nd elections, as well as the call for there to be transparency, accountability, and for the will of the people to prevail. Dr. Anthony, your opening comments with regards to, I know you've been part and parcel of this process prior to the elections, elections day, and even after.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the program. What else can we say? I think we have gone through a lot of it already, but I think maybe there might be new viewers, so perhaps we need to restate some of the things that have happened over the last couple of days. One of the things that struck me is that we've had a relatively smooth election day process. The problem started when we started counting Region 4 ballot, and even the first night when we were tabulating, that went fairly okay because they were using the statements of poll. But the following day, and that's where things got interesting, instead of using the statement of poll, they somehow mysteriously they came up with a spreadsheet, and we are not sure where they got those numbers from in the spreadsheet. And then we saw, when we were comparing our statements of poll with that spreadsheet, that there was a big margin of error. And every time you look at the votes for APNU, it was increasing, the PPP votes were decreasing, and so we knew that this was all fraudulent. And so we protested, and since then we have been asking for, first of all, we asked for proper tabulation using the SOPs. They denied us that, and they find various ways and means of trying to continue that process without using SOPs. The Chief Justice herself ordered them to do that, and they disobeyed the Chief Justice because they did not follow those instructions, and then declared the results for Region 4. So in everyone's mind who were there, who witnessed this, everybody is saying, the local, the international, the regional observers, all the political parties, everybody is saying that this process is a fraudulent process. And that is why it is so important that we have a recount of the votes. And, that's what we've been asking for. By the law, there's a period when you can ask for a recount. Almost all the parties that contested in Region 4 asked for that recount, and GCOM has denied the recount. And, on what basis have they denied the recount? And then, the new court case that is now there. So, obviously, it seems like the APNU and AFC does not want the Region 4 results to be counted. And it is obvious because they have put all kinds of obstacles in the way to prevent that from happening.
Ms. Manickchand, I want to bring you in here, and we have recognized, we've seen Mr. Gaskin coming out, we've seen Sir Sridhar Ramphal coming out, we've seen the Justice for All party, which is part of the coalition, coming out, and we have seen the WPA, as much as they drop in their whole argument of shared governance. I think there is a recognition from all that I would have mentioned, including the WPA, that there needs to be a transparent process in terms of tabulating the results, whether the Region 4 results or if they want to go back to a national recount to ensure transparency do you think that more and more supporters of the coalition, partners of the coalition, are recognizing that there are issues with the tabulation?
Eddy, it is difficult for any person who is even slightly aware of what's happening and what has happened since the 2nd of March to now, who is reasonable and sensible and bright, and I hold that to be the majority of our Guyanese people, to not have serious concerns about the results and the way they were arrived at. As you would notice, many people are saying, we don't care what result we arrive at. We're talking about doing it through a proper process. So it's the process. The EU says very clearly, we don't care about the outcome. We're not talking about who wins. We don't have a horse in the race. We don't care who wins. Whoever the Guyanese people want to win, that's who must win. We're talking about how you get to the winner. You must have a fair and transparent tabulation of the votes, and the process must be fair. And it is what has happened from the 2nd to now. Every single political party that contested the election, every single international partner, the US, Canada, the UK, Norway, France, Barbados, all the CARICOM countries, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, Grenada, everybody, and the entire Commonwealth, all the 54 countries in the Commonwealth, India, the ACP countries, everybody has said that the OAS, the Organization of American States, everybody has said the process is not fair. That we don't know in the middle of counting, it wasn't even the middle would be 50%, it's about 40% of counting. Mr. Mingo just stopped this thing and declared results for the APNU AFC that the GCOM statements of polls do not show. So he gave them, in many cases, as the Commonwealth Observer Group said, he gave them scores that show more voters than were registered to vote at the particular place for the APNU AFC. Now, you ask me how people feel, or more and more people are coming out. It is difficult for people to hear all of that evidence. See that the PPP very early on in the game, within 3 days of the election, without much time. I mean, people say we did fake SOPs. Well, we didn't have time to do that. As soon as this thing became an issue, we threw up our SOPs for scrutiny, and those SOPs could have been scrutinized as against the SOPs that were posted outside the various polling places. We gave our SOPs. The world has spoken. The only people who say these results are fine are the APNU AFC and GCOM. That's the only two people. They're very lonely in this struggle. And we know for sure that I know supporters of the APNU AFC or people who don't support a particular party but voted for them. Look, I have friends who voted for the APNU AFC, and there are people who've come out publicly on Facebook and said, I voted for the APNU AFC. I believe they deserved another chance, but this cannot be the way they get that other chance. You have to vote. So the point I'm making is most sensible people in this country, including the hardline APNU AFC supporter, they know that something is wrong, because if something was not wrong, the APNU AFC would have said, listen, PPP, move from here with your fake SOPs. Here are the real ones. And look, we're posting our real ones on our website. And look, GCOM has posted their real ones and ours match. Neither GCOM nor the APNU AFC has put up SOPs. They just said these numbers that they plucked out of a hat and called, these are the numbers, and they win the election. These are people who have a chance to say, recount these ballots, a 5, 6, 10 hour exercise. You recount these ballots and we will get sworn in and we will shut the PPP up and we will finally show that they were lying all along. They're refusing to recount the ballots. So even their most ardent supporter, people who love them, who have grown up supporting and believing in their principles and ideology and causes, are questioning and have questioned whether they're telling the truth. And so you see Dominic Gaskin, who I see he's being slaughtered about waiting too long to speak. So did the WPA, that's the criticism against them, and the JFAP, Justice for All Sharma. They should have spoken from day one. I think I'm willing to forgive them not speaking from day one, because I think it was a process where people felt like they even me, I kept feeling, oh, GCOM's going to do the right thing, or the APNU is going to do the right thing. They probably didn't feel they needed to speak until it became very, very clear that Granger's about to be sworn in. on results that are not transparent, on results that he said are not transparent. Mr. Granger, so to the supporters of Mr. Granger and the APNU AFC, I want to just point out to you that it was Mr. Granger who called Prime Minister Mia Mottley and said, I don't believe the results are transparently arrived at. I think I won, but I don't want to be sworn in on results that are not transparently arrived at. Could you come and do a recount? And then when the people left, he made a statement and he said, I regret to say that we have not been able to come to a transparent declaration. So Mr. Granger himself is accepting that the declaration of those results were not arrived at using a transparent process. And his supporters have heard him and they understand that. And so to the Dominic Gaskins and the GFAPs and the WPs, I say, it's sometimes it is lonely to be on the side of right, but history will mark you present and it will mark them as standing on the right side. And for me, I tip my hats to those gentlemen and ladies in those parties, because it would have taken extra strength to stand against your own party as you do the right thing, as they did the right thing.
Dr. Anthony.
Well, I think APNU, there are a number of parties that make up APNU, and it's good that we are hearing from some of them, WPA and Justice for All Party. We want to encourage the others to come out and add their voice to this. Sidney Alcock represents a party.
He's a good man. Why wouldn't he speak up?
And he should be able to speak up because, again, one thing that everybody has agreed on, including the president, is the need for a recount. Right? Everybody agreed to that. But why is it, if we all agree, all the political parties agree that we need to have a recount, why is it that a candidate for the APNU AFC was allowed to go and take a court case to prevent the recount? Why is it? And so there are mixed messaging here. On one hand, the person who is overall, I will assume overall in charge of this, the president, the main candidate for the APNU AFC, is saying, I want a recount. I agree with everybody else. Let's do this thing transparently so that everybody can feel comfortable that we had a free, fair, and transparent process. Yet, when we are about to embark on that process, you have all these obstacles being thrown in the way of having this process. I want to see, because I'm sure there are many persons who are in the APNU and in the AFC. I still want to believe that there are many persons in these two parties, or the APNU coalition, if you like, that are decent-minded. And some of them privately have said to me that they are ashamed of what is going on. Some of the supporters of the APNU and AFC, just like Priya said, voted for them, but now they said this thing has gone too far, and we are totally ashamed of what is happening. This is not what we voted for. And remember, during the campaign, the key campaign message was what? Honesty and integrity. Here is your chance to show your honesty and integrity, because what is going on right now, there isn't a shred of honesty, nor anything relating to integrity here. And so if you really believe your campaign message of honesty and integrity, now is your chance to prove it. So I want to appeal to the decent-minded persons in the leadership and the regular rank and file of the APNU and AFC. We want to hear your voice, because this here is larger than just a few people trying to determine the path of our country by hijacking this electoral process. This country has gone through too much. We have been through a long time of all kinds of electoral irregularities. We don't want to go back there. And we have an opportunity for GCOM to do the right thing, and that is even at this late stage. While they have fraudulently tabulated the results, even at this late stage, they have an opportunity to do the right thing, to get a recount done for Region 4, And once you're able to do that properly, with the eyes of the international community, the local observers, the regional observers, political parties being present, I think everybody would then welcome the results that emerge from such a process. But to deny us that recount is going to set this country back in a serious way. And as the US have said very clearly, I don't think anybody can misread that message. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said very clearly, there'll be serious consequences if we do not tabulate properly the Region 4 results and then declare the right results. So I don't know how much clearer people can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to just, again, I mean, it came over very clearly in what Frank just said. Nobody is saying go and declare the PPP winners, because we are saying we won. The PPP is very clear. We won the election. But nobody is saying go and declare the PPP election as winners. We're saying go back and let's count it properly. Count it the way it should have been counted, and whoever wins, wins. So if it's the PPP, fine. We're all happy. And if it's not the PPP, the PPP has to live with that. Go back into the opposition benches and fight again. So I'm saying that it's not that we want the PPP to be declared winners. We believe the PPP will be declared winners once the process is complied with. But what the outcry of the world is go do it the right way, count the ballots. Not so that the world doesn't care so much. And I too, frankly, not so much about which party wins. It is about giving effect to the will of people in this country who went to that polling station, did their job as citizens, voted, listened to people's plans, looked at their track records, voted religiously on the 2nd of March, stood up in the sun, stood up in lines, waited, did their civic duty. They are entitled to have their votes counted. They're entitled to have their voices heard through that ballot. Their will must be given effect to. And that is what people are asking. Not to declare the results for the PPP, but to count the ballots, and whoever wins gets the government. Now, if that is the query, then what could be the objection by any party to have the ballots counted? And I see very strongly, Eddy, that Frank raised it just now. A candidate of the AP and UAFC filed these proceedings. Let's be very frank here. Mr. Granger said to Mia Motley that that he wants the Caribbean community, the whole Caribbean, to have presence when when a recount would happen. He asked for the recount. He agreed with Jagdeo, the leader of the opposition, and Mia Motley as chairman of CARICOM, what those terms would be. And then a girl who works with a minister, public servant, humble public servant, goes and files an application to the court to stop Mr. Granger from doing what Mr. Granger promised Mia Motley, the Caribbean community, and Jagdeo that he would do.
And she's also a candidate.
So she's a candidate of the AP and UAFC. She's a public servant. Her lawyer is a candidate of the AP and UAFC. And listen, let's be frank. I mean, we're talking frankly here. She has a right to do it if she wants to do it, but we live in Guyana. The parties, the political parties, the two main ones, don't allow that kind of independence. You gotta ask permission before you do something like that. And they have dominion over her. They can fire her, and we know how that works. Nobody wants to lose their job. They could call their other candidate who's a lawyer and say, drop this thing immediately. So it appears to me and to every right-thinking person that Mr. Granger is fully aware of these proceedings. He knows what happened. He permitted them, because nobody would have filed those without asking his permission. The parties don't allow, frankly, do not allow for that kind of freedom. If there were two brave young people going forward, Miss Moore and Mr. Ford, they would have been excised like gangrenous hands immediately from that party. They would have been disowned. The PNC would have gone, and the APNU and the AFC would have gone to court and said, we want to be parties to this matter. And they would have said to the court, don't bother with these two busybodies, because that's what we call them in law. We want the recount. None of that has happened. So we can only conclude that the APNU AFC does not want a recount. And you have to question why. You have to wonder why.
But I think, and you mentioned the fact that Mr. Gaskin and others are coming out, and there might be many others who may want to come out and ask, but I think the supporters themselves of the AP and UAFC should ask their leaders, why is it you don't want to recount if you're convinced that you would have won the elections?
Yeah.
I think that's the questions the average supporter of the party should start asking the Val Lawrences and so on.
No, but I see
of
it
this
happening,
world.
you know, Eddie. I saw James Bond, and I mean, the majority of his followers and people who comment on his posts are strong APNU AFC supporters, and they are saying to him, but what is the person used one of those common parlance things, I can't remember what it is, but essentially what's the dance? Why we end this dance? Count the vote and end this dance. And those are very strong supporters on his page saying to him, Chief, just count this thing. Why are we resisting that? We know we won the elections, let's count. And that's essentially it.
Maybe let's put it in cricket terms, right? We went and let's say you had the T20, right? And you're appealing the umpire's decision, right? So what do? You go to the third umpire, which is the video footage of everything. These boxes got how everybody votes. So if the statements of poll, for whatever reason, you believe is not reflective of what is in the box, well then let me go to the third umpire, which is the
actual ballot.
The actual box. We open it. How people voted are in there, and we can come back each ballot and see how people voted, right? So we'll get a true picture of what actually happened at every station. So why is it that if everybody is saying, okay, let's do it back, right? We said we want to do back Region 4 because this is where the dispute is. The 9 other regions, GCOM actually declared them.
Yeah.
They count, right? Everybody agree with the count, and they declare those things. They're not challenged. There was a challenge in 6 and there was a challenge in 5. They found the arrow, they went back, they look at it, and they all agree, they signed off, right? So they had a recount there. Why is it so difficult to have recount in 4? You understand? So if you got any doubt, let's do 4. Now when we were putting up the argument that we want 4 to be done so that we can certify this thing once and for all, so they won't have any problem. They then said, okay, we want the other 9 to do, right? We're going to do back the other 9. So we said, all right, if that's what you want, we don't have a problem with that. Let's do it back. It's going to take more time, but if that's going to satisfy you, we are happy to go ahead and do that. And you know, the nearest that we have got to something like this was when we had a forensic audit, right? Some years ago, when the PNC questioned this whole thing about what is in the box and so. And guess what happened? When we actually did the forensic audit, the PVP ended up with more votes.
That happened in Region 5.
Right.
In this budget,
the PVP ended up with more votes. So we don't have a problem. If you want to do the entire country back, let's do it.
Yeah.
But don't delay. Let's start. Let's get it on. You know, let's go there and get it done, so that these results are not further delayed, right? We are asking for Region 4 alone. The APNO and AFC said they want the other 9. All right, well, let's do back the whole country. We don't have a problem with that. Let's do back the whole country so that we can ensure that whatever those results are, people can say this genuinely reflect the will of the Guyanese people. Yeah. So why are you afraid now? Yeah, you understand?
And
why are you afraid?
I see the argument being used that, oh, recounts are not allowed. Let's declare the results and then we'll challenge it in court. That is a very stupid argument. It started with Kemara Jamjitan. I'm ashamed of him. I'm disappointed that he could be so careless about people's right to choose a government. So he's essentially saying if at 5% the next election, 5% of the votes are counted, somebody declares, you got to take whatever that declaration is and then just fight it in court, which is madness. Yeah. But I want to say this. A recount, the first recount applied for, must be granted as a matter of right. It is a right. So nobody's doing us a favor when we say we want to recount and they say no. It is a matter of right. Is when you go to the second recount and the third recount and so on, that people can then use their discretion. And that makes sense because, you know, you don't want to hold up an election result indefinitely like 19 days where we're at now. But once you ask for a recount, it must be given as a matter of right. That has not happened here. And so this is not we're not asking for something that is GCOM doesn't have the ability to give. GCOM is run by a commission made up of 3 members from the AP and UAFC and 3 appointed by the PPPC and a chairperson. She has a casting vote. What that means is if there's a tiebreaker, if there's you know, you have 3 and 3 on the same vote, she can break that with her vote. Now, if Mr. Granger really wants to do a recount, he can say to his commissioners, we're doing the recount. We've already said to our commissioners, we're doing a recount. So they're ready to vote for that. He could say that to his honor. We won't even involve the chairman. The commission could make that decision. When
So
Mr. Mingo...
6 to
yes, if she doesn't.
If she doesn't want
Right. When Mr. Mingo said that he wasn't going to give a recount of Region 4, the commission had it within their remit lawfully without going to court or anywhere else before declaring the results to say, no, we think a recount should be done. Mr. Mingo must go back and do that recount. You know how I'm aware that they are aware of that power that they have? Because the chairperson stood up in court twice to Justice Roxanne George, the Chief Justice, at 2 different days at 2 different locations, and said, I am undertaking, and undertaking in law is like an order. I'm undertaking, you don't have to make an order, Judge, because I am undertaking that I will grant a recount. On the Saturday before, on the 14th of March, she said, we're going to a meeting at 3 o'clock, and this was at 2:15 in the afternoon. We have a meeting scheduled for 3, and that meeting is to determine how the recount will happen. So the decision was already made to do a recount. That meeting was to decide how to facilitate it, how many people you're going to have, which place, whether you're going to have live cameras, and so on and so on. So it was already decided, and she said that to the court, and more than saying that to the court, because people weren't in there, so you might think this is Priya's word against hers. The chairperson issued a statement that said she undertook to the judge to do this. So the chairperson and all the commissioners know that it is within their remit. They have a mandate to override what Mr. Mingo says and order the recount. That can still happen. You don't have to wait for a court proceeding for that to happen.
But the other argument you're seeing coming from, and I think you raised this earlier, and I don't think really supporters of the coalition are buying that argument, that these SOPs are fake, that the PPP put up, and that they don't buy the Commonwealth, the OAS statement, I think, that says, based on the PPP SOPs and the failure of the coalition and GCOM to put out the SOPs, their SOPs, it seems that there is something to hide. Not in those exact words. I'm seeing the AP and UFC raising the argument that they have no authority to release statements of poll, and GCOM is not obligated to release statements of poll, despite an election that there are so many questions over.
But it's a simple thing, right? At a polling station, whichever political parties are there, each one of them would get a statement of poll. Then one is publicly placed on the station itself. So that becomes a public document. Anybody can go there and review it. And then, of course, GCOM would have its own copy. So these documents are well distributed, right? Now, one of the things that in this instance, and this is my opinion, my thinking, why they cannot come and show us, GCOM nor the APNU and AFC, why they can't come and say, here is our copy of the statement of poll that says, when GCOM called out 100, this is the statement of poll that we use. And PPP, they for the same thing, because all the statement of poll for a polling station should be exact, right? Because it's one source and it should be identical. So if GCOM got a different number, APNU got a similar number to GCOM, produce your statement of poll. And you know why they can't produce it? Because the paper that got these numbers, that paper, just like money, if you put a UV light on it, it got special characteristics. So if you go and make over paper, right, then it wouldn't have those special characteristics. And therefore, if it is forged, it can be picked up right away. So that is why they can't come and say, well, here is ours. Because if they do that, then, and we check it with UV light, we will see that it's fake. It's made up paper or whatever. You understand?
And if they do come with the original, then the numbers will be different.
And that is why, so far, instead of producing an actual piece of paper so that we can look at it, which is our right, because when we are tabulating and you call a wrong number, I must be able to put my hands up and say, sorry, I have a different number here. Can you please show me the document that you are calling from? And when they produce that document, I must be able to take it and examine it, and I'm satisfied that that is the right thing, right? But what happened in this process? They didn't want to show us any document, so they made a spreadsheet. They called numbers from the computer, right? When we asked, where is the SOP that you used to compile this number? Mr. Lowenfield said to us that he is going to have a process where they're going to use SOPs, right? Yet, they fail to use SOPs and keep using some table, some Excel spreadsheet that anybody can make up, right? And never produce one of the GCOM's statements of poll to say, here is a statement of poll, let us compare. The very first day when they did it for Region 4,
They did it right.
they did it right. We completed 400 and something.
21.
421. The first day, because they were doing the right thing. All of a sudden it changed. The next day it changed. Why? Right? So we know that it is very difficult for anybody to fake that statement of poll. And that is why even if they have any dispute with statement of poll now, let us go and do the recount. Let us open the boxes. And it brings me to another point, because we see these boxes have been moving all over the place. And I'm very happy that people are at least coming out and watching the boxes, because this is your evidence. If you go and tamper with the container or you try to steal the boxes or whatever, then we wouldn't know what was in the boxes. So that is why people are taking this thing so seriously, of being there, being present, putting eyeballs on the containers so that that doesn't happen. And I see a lot of people coming out and ensuring or trying to ensure that the security of those containers are well maintained. And I think they have a right to do that, because it is important, because this is the only evidence now that we have of what took place at the elections. And if for some reason somebody go and do anything with those boxes, then we wouldn't have that evidence. So it's important that people watch those boxes and make sure that it's not tampered with and so forth.
Yeah.
And so when they were moving them, and so that's why people were so concerned, right? So we hope that wherever it's being kept now, that it's being kept under tight security and that it's well protected, because this is the when we go to a recount, we'll have to open those containers and get into those boxes.
And the narrative that I see coming up, Eddy, that it's not a narrative. Mr. Granger has said himself in his own statement, we must leave GCOM to do their work. And he believes if GCOM gets the chance to do their work without interference, they will give a fair decision. He's mad. He has to be mad. GCOM is the people, the organization that have people in there who stood up and declared results that showed more votes for the, yes, first of all, they didn't tabulate it. Secondly, when they did declare the results, it shows that the APNU got far more than the official document shows, the statements of poll. When the recount was asked for, GCOM denied it. When the other 6 parties asked for the recount, GCOM denied it. When you're trying to find Mr. Mingo or Mr. Lowenfield or Ms. Claudette Singh or the DCO, Roxanne Myers, they're hiding, they disappear, they're unavailable except to the AP and UAFC. Mr. Granger is essentially asking us to, they got Thief Man cleaning out your house, and listen, Guyana, don't do anything. Leave him there, let him finish his work before you can fully say he's a thief man. So it doesn't matter that the whole neighborhood outside hollering, thief, thief. This man and this people house thiefing out the house. He said, no, leave him. Let him finish his work. Then we will decide what we will do. Right, so that's what he's asking, and it's not something that's going to fly in this country. We're not going to tolerate it.
But not only that, who would be the beneficiary if the thief man finished the job?
Right, well, the thief man is taking these things and taking it straight to Congress, please. That's what's happening here. And so I want to raise with the public that whole thing that the U.S., and because they saw Mr. Grange and the AP, and you from day one start saying, oh, GCOM is independent, we're not doing their work, let them do their work independently and so on. But so people have now, their statements are very clear. And when Mr. Mike Pompeo, the United States Secretary of State, speaks, he speaks for the whole U.S., he speaks for the U.S. government, as it happens when the ambassador here speaks. And so what he was saying, what he is saying very clearly is that whoever benefits from those fraudulent results, whoever benefits, he didn't say what is GCOM do it or the AP, gone past that. Whoever benefits from those results will suffer serious consequences.
Yeah.
So the minister who wants to go into government and benefit from fraudulent results that would not have put them there, or a process that didn't declare fair results, or a president who wants to go in there, or a minister whose child is going to a university, or any other person that derives office from the government that did not get into place in a transparent way, everybody will suffer serious consequences.
And not only those ministers,
MPs, regional people,
and also those GCOM officials.
Police officers.
It mentioned those who, I think, facilitate.
It wasn't only benefit. Those who benefit from the fraudulent results, and those who cause it, I think, facilitate or cause it to happen.
We have to get the right thing as we go along. Just share with the public. But I'll check with just someone, we can probably share it for clarity's sake. But the other thing that we're hearing, it's an argument that you're putting up to somehow give credence to the results by saying that the PPP never won Region 4. I think it's something that we need to explain again, because that's the argument coming from him.
Let me explain that right now. We never said that we have won Region 4.
In fact, we didn't.
Right. So we're not saying that. Right? All we're asking for is to ensure that whatever votes were cast in Region 4, that it's properly counted. Right? What we have said, however, is that overall, when you add the votes that we got in Region 4, plus the 9 that GCOM would have declared, that when you put all of that together, that we have won the elections. Because we have those statements of poll, the numbers, APNU got them, right? The other parties got them, so everybody know what the outcome would be once we total it up, right? So that's what we're saying. We're not saying that we have won Region 4. We know we didn't win Region 4.
Yeah. And I think based on the calculations that the PPP released using its state of poll, the PPP said that we got 80,000 votes, 80,000 plus votes, and APNU got 114,000 plus.
Right.
So clearly the PPP never claimed.
Exactly.
So the PPP is essentially what the results show, not what the PPP says, what the results show is that APNU got 33,000 votes more than the PPP in Region 4, 33 something. 1,000 votes more than the PPP. So let's be very clear, the APNU AFC won Region 4. What GCOM released is that APNU got 58,000 votes more than the PPP. So that is the problem. They gave them more votes than they have. It's not that we're saying we won Region 4, we didn't. The APNU beat the PPP in Region 4 by 33,000 votes. But when you add up that in the whole country, the PPP would have won by more than 17,000 votes. What the GCOM released results say, the declaration, the fraudulent declaration, sought to give the APNU a 58,000 lead in Region 4, which would see in the whole country, in Region 4, when you add that up in the whole country, you would see them leading by 6,500 votes, and that is what is bogus about the results.
Good. So the Assistant Secretary of State for the Western Hemisphere, I'm going to go with his statement first. This is just for clarity. Michael Kozak, he said, under U.S. law and practice, those who participate and benefit from electoral fraud undermine democratic institutions and impede a peaceful transition of power can be subject to a variety of consequences. And he was speaking about the Guyana elections. As we go on, I would probably find the other
those are very serious words.
Very strong.
And very strong. We have never had that in any elections. Here it is, you have very powerful people in the United States making these statements. And they're talking about our elections here. And I hope that the leadership of APNU and AFC is paying attention. Because, you know, if they lead us down this road of, you know, just going ahead and swearing in the president or whatever, then this country is going to attract serious sanctions, both at the personal level and, you know, later on perhaps maybe the country itself would suffer.
But what kind of patriot does that? How could you say you love Guyana and you have Guyanese? In this state of uncertainty with election results, in this state of real trauma with the COVID virus, with the COVID-19 pandemic in the world, how could you say you love Guyana and put us in a position? Mr. Granger could change all of this. Mr. Granger could change all of this with a simple call to his commissioners, with a simple call to his candidates and lawyer there, and say to them very clearly, you cannot do this. This is what I want. This is what we will do. And he could say one line. He could say, I don't care who does what. I am not going to be sworn in. I'm not going to allow myself to be sworn in on these results as they stand right now. So all who, assuming he's innocent of all these machinations going on, whoever wants to play the fool, do that. But I'm telling you, you still won't get the end result, because I will not be sworn in on this. But he has a bigger responsibility as president of this country, which he still is, whether we like it or not. He has a responsibility to put a halt to this, because you're endangering people's lives in large numbers here right now. Nobody trusts Valda Lawrence or the government or even the ministry's directives and advisories and so on, because there's no government in place. We're running on auto, and we have a health crisis facing us down now. We need all our resources. We need the PPP to get together with the PNC and the APNU and the AFC and Justice for All and WPA, and we put all our heads together. We need to get the professionals and the health people and people who don't believe in politics, and let's fight this thing. Let's attack this virus and get out information there, and treatment and different things we need to do so that Guyanese don't fall like flies. The people who are stalling this up now, you're putting real lives at real risk. This is not a joke anymore. How do you call yourself a patriot as you endanger the lives of the Guyanese citizens you stood up and swore to serve? It baffles me.
And look what is happening maybe with the economy. Businesses are not moving. Yeah. Things are shutting down. A lot of the agencies that would normally lend Guyana money have frozen those loans and all kinds of things to Guyana. So we have a problem. There isn't a money flow. And right now, instead of the government finding money to put to the COVID-19 fight, we understand they're asking now the World Bank to give them $5 million. One of the way that we can combat this COVID-19 is that we have to get the tests in Guyana. The first set of tests that we had about 30 kits.
3-0.
3-0. That's not enough. And one of the reasons that I believe why we are only showing maybe that we have 5 cases is because we lack the capacity to test many more people. Now, you have the person who is in charge of the fight, let's say, for COVID-19 is Valda Lawrence. She's also in the PNC, busy with all kinds of things that is going on here. She cannot focus on what we need to focus, this medical emergency that we have in our hands right now. You know, so we are in a serious thing, and the longer they drag this out, sad to say that we are going to have problems evolving. We see what is happening right now in the US, right? They have shortages of all kinds, personal protection equipment, ventilators, and all those things. How prepared are we? And again, We can't find these players to come and tell the Guyanese people, this is what we're doing, this is how we're handling this, this is, that kind of
Last night, Prime Minister Motley had, this was like the third one I've seen personally.
Yeah.
She had a sit down with a live interview going on Facebook, and so saying what Barbados was doing. Barbados, I think, has one case they found.
Yeah.
And what Barbados was doing, where they're preparing, what they're asking people to do, how they're asking people to stock up what kinds of goods. That is what legitimate leaders do.
Yeah.
That is what people who truly care about the people they're going to serve do. I mean, I say without apology, if we count those ballots and the APNU AFC gets in, wins the election, and Valda Lawrence is made minister, I will first pledge my allegiance to help her in whatever way I can with this fighting this virus. But right now, she's not the legitimate minister. Nobody's listening to her. So even if we wanted to be kind and tell them, listen to Valda, the majority of this country will not listen to her because they don't feel like their vote was counted. And so you have a real problem with that.
And a problem that could, that could be resolved in a matter of hours.
And that is why we need to resolve it.
And get on with the business
it's
of
quite
running the
easy,
country.
it's just a counting problem. We count up the thing, declare the winner, and then we move on.
Right, and whoever wins, wins.
What's so difficult about that?
Your closing comments, we're almost out of time.
Well, I think, we need to be vigilant. Basic thing that we're asking for is a recount of Region 4. And once we can get that, we can do that very quickly. Once we have GCOM willingness to be able to do this, and we need to get back the international and regional observers to oversee the process and to be part of that, watching on and see what is going on so that it's transparent, it's free, and it's fair. And that's all we're asking for. And with right-minded people coming out and adding their voice in the APNU, in the AFC, from civil society and so forth, I think we'll be able to wake up the others who are taking this hardline position and who are frankly taking positions that are not in the interest of this country. So we need those voices, and once we have those sane, rational voices coming out, I can see that we will move this dynamic, get that recount, and move the process forward.
I think all of this can be stopped by one person, that is David Granger, the presidential candidate of the APNU AFC, who boasts of many years of service to this country. He could immediately put an end to all of this by saying that I will not get sworn in on results that were declared in the opaque manner, fraudulent manner, and the last set of results were declared, as a result of which I am instructing my commissioners at GCOM that they will agree to a recount, whether it's of Region 4 or the whole country, whichever one he wants. I'm going to be asking Ms. Motley to send her team back, and I'm going to be notifying the Chairperson and the other observers who said they're willing to come back. And he can put an end to all of this now. This is a person who went to us not only in 2011 and 2015 and this year 2020 and told us that he was decent and honest and we could trust him, but told us that he is a patriot because he served his country and he knows what service looks like. Mr. Granger, if he has people around him who do not want him to do this, it's very easy. He knows very well how to deal with them. He has dealt with people before that came up against him. The PNC has done that frequently, many times. They excised people, they recalled people from the National Assembly. They ended relations with people who went against them in their own party. So he knows how to do that. In the meanwhile, we are saying very clearly that GCOM cannot be trusted. Please do not insult our intelligence by asking us to leave GCOM to do its work when GCOM has been nothing but unfair and partial in this whole process. We do not trust GCOM. The Guyanese people do not trust GCOM, and I don't see that how you could possibly trust GCOM, Mr. Granger. In the meanwhile,
part of the PNC.
Yes, well, many people say that GCOM is actually an arm of the PNC, and that is one of the saddest things in 2020 that we have to deal with. That a constitutional commission that was established when we started talking about more independence for bodies in Guyana. It was established in that 2000 period. And we have a constitutional commission that has become so tainted. I mean, shame on all the people who did this. And it's really, the chairperson for me has been, for me personally, I'm not speaking for the PPP, has been a major disappointment. She's been a complete failure in that job, and really calls into question whether she was suitable in the first place, and it has wider consequences. I know the whole fight for gender equality took a licking here because she was unable to deliver what she said she would deliver, and so we've gone back a couple of steps in making women equal and showing that we're capable of doing these kinds of jobs. In the meanwhile, I'm very, very pleased to see all the people who are turning out who have no relation to the PPP or to any political party to look at these boxes, to guard ballot boxes, calling themselves the guardians of democracy and standing together. That gives me great hope. It tells me that this country is not going to be for many years where it was under the Burnham era. It tells me that we are going to climb out of this and democracy will prevail. And so I say, keep your spirits up. This is going to be something that we beat, but we have to stand together to do that. We have to persist and sustain our efforts at fighting this dictatorial behavior that we're seeing from the APNU, AFC, as well as GCOM. And together, I'm absolutely certain we can do this.
I want to thank you very much, Dr. Anthony, Ms. Manickchand, for being here, and to your viewers, we want to thank you very much for spending the last hour or so with us. In parting, I just want to encourage you, the COVID-19 is a serious issue. Let us take the necessary precautions, follow the do's and don'ts that are being released by the WHO, and practice what you're
three
told.
quick things.
Okay, go
Three
ahead.
quick things.
Dr. Anthony, that's your field.
Hand hygiene, so wash your hands as frequently as possible. And you don't have to get fancy hand sanitizers. Soap and water is good enough. Wash for 20 seconds at least and do it thoroughly. So that's the first thing. If you have a cough, observe what is called respiratory etiquette. That's a fancy term. But what it means, if you cough and you don't have maybe tissue or something with you, you can do this and cough into your elbow, right? If you have a tissue, cough into that, dispose it properly. If you're sick with some kind of upper respiratory disease, then you can use a face mask so that you don't spread it to others, right? And then the third thing is social distancing. Social distancing is a simple thing. You at least stay 6 feet away from the other person that you're interacting with. Unfortunately, the studio doesn't allow us to do that. But social distancing is keeping yourself 6 feet away from the other person. And the rationale behind that is quite simple. Because if somebody sneezes, when you sneeze, the projectile coming out of your nose would probably go maybe about 3 feet or so, or a little bit more. So if you're out of range, you would not get those droplets falling on you, right? And as we know, this virus is spread by droplets. So 3 simple things to do: wash your hands, keep your distance, and if you got a cough or a cold, cough into your elbow or use something to protect the other person.
Right. And I'm no doctor, but I wanted to say what I found useful for my children, because I read it, is the 20 seconds, sing happy birthday twice, and actually show them how to wash, inside, outside, through your hands. And so wash thoroughly. A soap that is really good is that salt soap bar, the carbolic soap, which apparently is very cheap. It's $100 a bar, so you don't have to get fancy, expensive products. Yeah. And just wash with soap and water. In fact, it's advised that if you have soap and water available, don't use sanitizers, because soap and water does a better job. They do a better job than the sanitizing products. And then also to stay home. So I know everybody talks about social distancing, but because we're not testing and people can appear healthy and not have symptoms, I don't know who has it next to me. I don't even know if I have it. So what we want to do is stay away from people as much as possible so we don't spread this without knowing. And then, of course, eating healthily. If we could make sure that we boost our immune system by eating green vegetables and citrusy fruits, and getting vitamin C and eating fresh foods instead of things from tins and so on, that could help us with preventing us from getting this. And For me, it's extremely important that we take this seriously because the IMF has already said, and I believe them, and I really wish this weren't true, that we're extremely unprepared. We're one of the most unprepared countries for this virus. We do not have enough beds, let alone enough ventilators. We don't even have testing kits right now, and so we want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position where we're wringing our hands afterwards. Many countries who've walked this road in the last 2 months are saying that if they took precautions 3 weeks before that they're now taking, things would have been different. Well, Guyana, this is our 3 weeks before. We don't want 3 weeks from now to be wringing our hands and saying, God, I wish I had listened 3 weeks ago and stayed home and washed my hands and didn't lime and hang out with people and so on. And don't be offended if people say, don't come near me. Don't be offended because they might be telling you that to protect you from what they have. So this is something we have to do. It's just a new way of living until this period goes, but we have to do it.
Thank you very much again, guys, and thank you very much for joining us. Have a good rest of the evening. Bye for now.
Thank you.